Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, with a topic about sex. It's from the point of view of an older woman. Hello, all of you out there. I hope you're enjoying losing an hour of time in daylight savings time today, and you really thought you were going to be sleeping in on a Sunday. Yeah, it's not going to work that way. We did have daylight savings time last night. All of our lovely little clocks were jumped ahead. But on the good side of that, we have longer days and more sunshine. So, meaning we're getting closer into those spring months. And in those spring months, everybody starts to go outside. All the women are buying their new bikinis for the beach. People getting in shape. All that good stuff to look forward to. Now, with that being said, we're showing a lot of skin. And especially in the coming months and mainly in the summertime at the beach. And a lot of people have got piercings and tattoos. Hey, you might have got a few when you were inside during COVID. Granted, we are still inside during COVID. Just a couple of the regulations and, prohibitions have been lifted. Little. Very, very little. We are still getting high in numbers on both cases and deaths. So, do keep that in mind. Now, there are a lot of piercings and tattoos out there, and, people get these because they want them. Not to go out there and try and make themselves attractive for somebody else. It's really an inner piece to themselves. They represent things that are close and dear to them. However, it's to build confidence and bring out that alluringness of sexuality. And yes, there are some people out there, potential partners, who don't like them, and there are those who do like them, but they do have a sexuality to them. Granted, the attractive psychological part to it is mostly associative. Your experiences, we know there are a lot of genital piercings that are out there, and piercings in general in certain places that have a sexual connotation to them. And sometimes that's like the first thing that potential partner looks at. And when they look at that and on a person of piercing, they either ask you or they just are attracted because they want to try out that piercing on them. It's purely sexual. But this isn't, there's attractiveness in everything. It doesn't make a difference if somebody has a piercing or not, or a tattoo or not. You're always going to get the same kind of sort of you get those who are attracted to it and those who are not and don't have them. And then you get the individuals who don't have them and won't have a tattoo or piercing on themselves, but very much find it sexually attractive on their partner and will ask their partner to go and get one. And then you have those that your relation's deep. One gets their name put on themselves of their partner. Sometimes that is done as, a partnership. Really need to think about that because that's actually going to stay on you for your life. I'm not saying not to do it because it is somewhat into kids, tattoos and stuff. But when it comes to tattoos in general or a piercing and how much they are attractive or sexual, that goes into a whole different thing, sort of. Yes, like I said, it has the same connotations of attractiveness and choice by that opposite or that potential partner who is looking at you. And, a lot comes into play where, obviously you cannot change someone's opinion. You may like that person a lot and they may just not like the piercings and stuff like that. And, they might just get up and say to you, I find you really attractive. I really like you, but I can't get past your piercings. Well, then you really don't like that person and you're not really attracted to them because you can't get past something that's part of them and what means something to them. So, you get a lot of looks depending on where your piercing is. And sometimes you get a lot of compliments. Others are, some people will come to you and tell you, oh my God, you're beautiful. But if you didn't have those piercings, you just basically turn around and say, well, I do. And I didn't do it for you, so you're not going to look at me. Bye-bye. Simple as that. Now, a lot of individuals who do get piercings and the people who are attracted to them, that and tattoos, is where exactly they get them. Some people will tell, you have some of the opposite sex or a potential partner. One of the biggest things for women is nipple piercing. And you'll get someone say that they don't like it because it's not a turn on. It's kind of a difficult piercing also for a woman. That one kind of sort of is 50-50 on that. Because it, depends on how you're built, how they're healing, and everything else. Now, a lot of the piercings and tattoos have basically come out a lot more nowadays where they're not hidden as much, and a lot of people have it on their face. And the piercings that come in to play are those that can be seen. And you got to ask, what is the attraction? And it's mainly, in this, really, there's a split. Because I think men, in some respect, are more acceptable than if a woman gets pierced. Because, people ask, what is the attraction toward females? With regards to that, now, some tribes out there, this is normal. And it is part of culture, beliefs, values, rituals. Getting a tattoo, getting a branding, getting a piercing is what makes that sexuality there, and that's how they base their mating on. So, here in the States, it's a melting pot. You get a mixture of everything, but obviously we look at things just a little bit differently. And some people look at them as if, especially for a female, that they're available. Other ways of looking at them is they have in some cultures been associated with wedding or marriage, and I think a lot of people know what those are and how they go about it, because that's normal. If they don't do that, then, this is where it goes, this is part of their culture, this is part of their beliefs, this is part of their tradition. We accept it more if we see a person of culture, then we're like, oh, that's part of their culture. We explain it away. But if it's just somebody who is like around us and born, raised here, if you want to call it that, you can't really go by that. I mean, you go onto these dating sites now and you get a lot of people who are, they picked you out of a lineup because you had those piercings. And they're very straightforward these days. So, really need to actually watch that as well. With body piercings, obviously, as time has gone on, with tattooing and body piercing, it has become more acceptable by a really immense growing number of teenagers and young adults. They use it as a self-expression. When they're younger, obviously, there is some sexuality to it. Hopefully, they're not exactly using it at the moment. But our young adults and teenagers are quite different than back in the day. Trust me, if you came out with a piercing, I mean, if you had a piercing or a tattoo, you hid it. As long as it can be hidden, and you only show it to the person that you were with and spending with, then it becomes sexual. This more outwardliness of that sexuality, it comes with piercings and tattoos now. A lot of people, like researchers and stuff, will have this meaning in their mind of find that, it suggests an association between like the body piercings and tattoos and early sexual initiation. And there's a higher number of sexual partners or risky sexual behaviors that are associated with a lot of tattoos and piercings. And this was actually found out in a study, mind you. And in the study, it was also evaluated. It was to evaluate like that sexual behaviors among young adults with body modifications. And there's a lot of other types of body modifications out there, which I think it's called scarring or branding, where they actually burn a design into your skin, allows it to heal, it stays there. I don't care how much pain tolerance you can take, you'd never get me doing that. I mean, it's different for other people. Like I said, it is part of cultures and traditions and stuff. So, and knowing that kind of puts a little bit more into it. They're not, they don't got Lanacane or anything to put on like numb the pain. So, if this is something you need to think about before you go out to do it. And I don't even know now if that's what they do if you go in for one of that type of body modification. I don't think they put any kind of numbing on the skin either. I'm not sure. So if you're interested in it, do look into it before you go and get it done. It's really something that you need to know is wherever you put it and whatever it is, it's going to be there forever. That's because you sit there and pick at it. I can't see you doing that, but okay. Yuck. The study actually was looking at the sexual behaviors and incidents of sexual harassment, like from in the past, self-attractiveness evaluations, and also there were a lot of questions. It was a survey, a lot of questions concerning tattoos and piercings, and the socio-epidemiology variables in sexual behaviors were compared between subgroups they studied. Now, the main outcome of this particular study relations between having body modification, tattoos, and piercing, and how they affect sexual behaviors in that particular population. And they used a logistic regression model. I know, big words, but they used it. They found that, adults with body modifications had their first intercourse statistically earlier and were more sexually active. Olivia? Really, on top of that, were more sexually active compared with their control group. So these are individuals that did have body modifications, that did have piercings, were able to express themselves and the like. Now, on that topic matter, we are going to take our first break in the show. So get that drink, get that snack, come back, get relaxed, and I will continue with this topic of tattoo and body piercing, sexuality, attractiveness, all that good stuff that comes along with it when I return. So, with more, and I am going to return with more sex talk with Andra, so hang loose, and I'll be back.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, with the topic about sex. It's from the point of view of an older woman. Welcome back. I hope you had a good time getting like some good foods and some drinks and everything, and whatever you will need, and that you are comfortable. As we move right along on the topic of like tattoos and piercing and the sexuality associated with it, and we left talking about a study that was conducted basically on young adults, growing teens. It does not say that this does not apply, because the times are different and they change all the time, to adults. Because a young adult could be 18 years old, which is technically legally an adult. So, a lot of this study, or what was the result of this study, continued with, there were no statistical significant differences in sexual orientation, sexual preferences, engaging in risky sexual behaviors, frequency of masturbation, and a history of sexual abuse that occurred between the groups. So having tattoos and piercing, there really wasn't a difference when it came to sexuality. And I know a lot of people associate piercings and tattoos as being wild in the bed, but that's not always true. It is a form of self-expression, and It builds people's confidence. It's just something that they like to do. You're either attracted to it or you are not. But it continued with looking at the opposite end, like in contrast to what was initially found. The frequency of sexual intercourses was actually statistically higher, believe it or not, and oral sex was more likely to be dominant sexual activity. And I really believe that, and this is with the adults with the body modification, which was compared to the controls. And I think that has to do with the aesthetics of it and oral sex and the, having that person right there, feeling that bit of jewelry or whatever it is that is there, and watching that. I mean, they associate it with if you could pierce your lip, or your tongue, which is supposed to be very sexual in nature, then it would mean that, it really turns you on with oral sex because you let somebody else go in your mouth. They want to put their penis in your mouth or a vagina, one or the other. And knowing that that's there, sometimes that can be misleading, because just because you know it's there, you may think that you feel it and you really don't. A tongue ring, tongue piercing, okay, that I can see because you are using your tongue in oral sex, so I can see where that would come into play. But having body modification has been found to be associated with early sexual initiation and really more liberal attitudes towards sexual behaviors, but not, and you would think that this would be one of the biggest things, but not towards or engaging in risky, sexual behaviors. And you would think that that would really stand out there. Is there are limitations on a lot of things. I think assuming just because somebody has tattoos and piercing, the first thing that hits everybody's mind is pain. So what do you associate sexually is they like it rough. So that's like the first thing that people will think of. That is not always the case. And you should not actually think in that manner, because you will get your feelings hurt for the most part. Other than that, I mean, there are situations when that is true. The sexuality that comes with that allure of the piercing, that allure of the tattoo, overall body modifications. Come on. You wanted a little kinky in the bedroom. I mean, who are those out there who actually have asked their mate to go out and get a piercing because they thought it would spice up their sex life or make it, that much more sexual or intense? And instead, your partner goes out and does it, and it wasn't something that they were going to do, but they want to please you, and it shouldn't be that way. But, if it's something they were thinking about all this time to get one, well, in that case, you have a little bit of leeway. But other than that, and continuing on with this subject matter, there are plenty of reasons why to get a tattoo or a piercing, but we are really touching on how men find most and least attractive in tattoos and piercing, believe it or not. Interesting enough, like I said, it's all about what somebody is attracted to, and not everybody is attracted to them. Obviously some of the top reasons for getting a tattoo is because, that person who got it would feel that it makes them look sexier. Another reason is because you feel as though you cannot live another day without permanently wearing a particular symbol on your body or something that means something to you. This way you carry it around with you, on you. It's really, really, really how you view it. But there was this study or this particular outreach of pouring information asking men what tattoos and piercings they found most and least attractive on a woman, believe it or not. Now, obviously, the higher amount, which was 69%, say that they are actually attracted to women with a tattoo. Again, it could be purely that sexual lure where they say, oh, she went through and got a tattoo. She must be freaky in the bed and likes a little pain. That's not always the thing, the case. And the remainder obviously were turned off. When it came to piercings, though, that was actually a little bit more controversial. There were 55 men were attracted to them, while 40, the opposite of 40, the remaining 45% were not. But it did show that more than half of the men that were asked say they like both piercings and tattoos. So that is something that has become more of a sexual attraction to the opposite sex or to the same sex, either or, completely up to you. And they actually, there's one in particular, having a tattoo is one thing, being actually sexually attractive or attractive in general to it. But they say that the most attractive spot on the body is the hip. The least attractive is the lower back. And I'm going to tell you, it's because they call it a tramp stamp. But that's not why people do it. If it's on the lower back, it's generally connected to something that's going all the way up a backside. They just haven't gotten it finished yet. Simple as that. It does take some time and everything to get these done. They also, when it came to piercings, the most attractive spot is the belly button, which is probably the most pierced part of the body on the female end. And that is very, very attractive. But they say, which is, there's a tie between the less attractive, the nose and the nether regions. I can understand that some people, you got to think about it. If you're getting it done in the nether regions, it makes it that it's either, can go either way. One, it ups the intensity of sex and sexual intercourse, or it goes the opposite. It becomes uncomfortable, either for yourself or for your partner that you're having sex with. So there's where you gotta look at that. They do say the nose, but nowadays, I think it's becoming much more acceptable with the nose. And it's really odd to know that men really do not like sexual piercings. Or on the other hand, really will not admit that they do, because then they're showing a part of them of how freaky they are. We judge way too fast, people. We need to stop. A very small amount actually said that nipple piercings are the most attractive. There were even a small amount that liked the tongue piercing, which is amazing within itself, because I thought that would have come out a little differently. But then they came up with, a really low amount that it was for the nether regions. And it's funny because, like I said, that is very weird, because the tongue ring, from what I've seen and heard from what people have said, they actually love that. So I don't know why they would say that, because that's supposed to be very sexual, but yet a very showing who you are in an expression more sexually. That way is the tongue ring. Hey, I could be wrong with this. Who is to say? Everybody's different. Like I said, everybody likes and dislikes things for different reasons. So, I mean, you really can't go and judge a person on just that. Remember, this is what it is. This is how a society works. And sexuality being one of the biggest things out there to, want and more desirable now. We're more open with it than we were back in the day. It's really trying to figure it out. Now, do you guys find nose piercings really attractive? Obviously, all piercings, body modifications, whether it be branding or tattooing, the piercing is a form of self-expression nowadays. It's self-expression, I think, has come out more in non-traditional ways, whereas, like I had mentioned earlier, the culture, the belief, the values, the tradition in that culture, and to honor that is one of the biggest reason. They obviously the jewelry industry is loving it, because they are coming out with some cool things that they literally, pieces of jewelry they probably never thought they were probably going to be making, because times have changed so much with piercings and what is being expressed through them. So there's so many things out there. You go on Etsy, and there's so many different types of piercings, and the individuals on there show their talent, and they're actually beautiful pieces of jewelry. It's depending on what you are doing, how you're looking at, how you feel, what you want to express. On that note, we are going to take a break in the show. So, completely up to you if you want to go and replenish that drink and that snack. Do so. If you do not, then just hang loose, remain comfortable, continue on with what you are doing. And I will meet you back here after the break, where our topic is tattoos, piercings, sexuality through it, attractiveness, sex talk with Andra.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, with a topic about sex. This from the point of view of an older woman. Welcome back to the third segment in the show, where we are discussing, do guys actually find, piercing and tattoos, attractive? And, particularly like nose piercings and things along that line. But before we do that, as always, I have a sex position for you guys that, you could use now that everybody's coming out of COVID. Still do, take precautions, because even though we have this vaccine, this particular vaccine is not foolproof. So, and you can look that up on your own to find out what I mean by that. That is completely up to you. Everybody has their own vision of it, but I think a lot of people are getting a little pressured into getting it because we have been in the house for such a long time, or we are living by some really cruel pandemic rules. But, that's what it is, and we, have to go by that. So, our sexual position today is the snow angel. It's not innocent at all, actually. So it's actually a really nice name for a really sexual position. And really having that little naughtiness to it is definitely in there. It's actually recommended for a partner with a particularly flexible penis, or if you're planning on incorporating some sort of like sex toy in there. So think about that as well. And you just kind of sort of have to really think that the partner on top in this position is reaching down with a dildo in their hand. Okay, so if you put your hand down there, boom, there you go. And then you must understand also that in this position, the way you are lying, there is easy access to fondle your partner's erogenous zone. So remember, if you're on the bottom, you're like kind of sort of more in control with this than your partner. And in this position, your partner's pelvis is perfectly positioned to grind up against, in females, your clitoris. And then add a little bit of butt massage in there as well to do the snow angel. It is basically starting out as like a missionary position with an upside down twist. You lie on your back and your partner straddles you facing away from you. So they're straddling you with their genitals and backside facing you, while their head and everything else is going in the opposite direction, like in the doggy style position with the straddling you on top of you. Now, you lift your legs and wrap them around your partner, and this is to elevate your pelvis so that they have an easier way to get to your genitals and get you all stimulated in there. And yes, you elevate your pelvis, and this is so that, like I said, they can penetrate you. Your partner can have full penetration. Then you can just basically grab your partner's backside and help them to slide up and back. Help them out a little in there. I know the erection goes in one direction. That's why they say you can use a toy with this. But if you can think this through in your head, it would be quite a different sensation. And it's almost like, all right, doggy style upside down. That's the only thing I can think of. But the other thing is your partner is traveling you in a doggy position, and you're laying on your back with your doggy position, your doggy style going upward. Like you're laying on your back doing it with your legs and your arms out, and your legs are wrapped around your partner. Kind of, sort of. If that even helped you, it would be amazing. I'll try to explain it as much as possible, but you can look this position up online, just like with everything else that I talk about. Please do, because if you are going to try something new, remember, educate, communicate with your partner, and consent between parties. Even ones that you've been with for years. You're not just going to come up and pop this out on them and say, hey, let's do this. Or you're going to flip them over and then do this. They'll look at you like you're crazy. Although they'll do the sex, but they will look at you crazy. Now, we are talking about attractiveness sexually or in general to a prospective partner with regards to piercings. This particular actually just took the view of the male and took on the nose piercing. And do they find it attractive? Obviously, like I said, piercings, body modifications, tattoos, all of that are what you want to, and it's not put, unless you went out there and got them because you actually had in your mind that it was attractive and you were out to go get the perfect man with that. I don't know, but it is totally up to you to get. So remember that. It is self-expression for a lot of people who are out there now, because it has basically come out more. And I'm just, talking and continuing with that. And knowing that that is what it is. Now, we are getting, there is more and more piercing jewelry out there nowadays, and they're getting very, very, personalized and extravagant, shall I say. It's not just going out to, get your ears pierced, which is acceptable, and most people will get their children's ears pierced at a very young age. Get rid of that basic pain, the fear, the remembrance of it, if there is that. And most of the times don't even remember you got your ears pierced. At least the first ones. After that, we have moved up to wearing plugs. Most people call them gauges, but that's not what they are called. They are called plugs, where they're stretching the ears. Another form of body modification. Gauges are the size of the plug, and a piercer will turn around and tell you that. So don't be surprised if you walk into a piercing establishment and say, oh, you want to stretch your ears with gauges. Well, they will correct that, trust me. Now, overall, with the nose piercing, which is one of the biggest things that is getting done, the attractiveness of it is subjective. And really, you need to keep that in mind. A lot of, men obviously teeter on the fence with that one and finding it attractive, as opposed to others that will not. And that is what it's all about. But they sometimes, like the people who are actually attracted to it, find a bit of a confidence in the person who has the piercing, which is helping with the overall attraction here. So remember that as well. And generally, guys, a lot of you guys don't really feel strongly about them, but I don't know if that's to say I'm really believing that is something that is in the past. Now that's more accepted and women are liking it. However, we're kind of sort of tinkering now in another direction, whereas when it comes to sexual and everything, a lot of people are trying to go back to the old ways and morals and values, which in some respects is really, really good because you're getting more of a respectfulness and the chivalry is not dead. But you cannot, if you're attracted to a person, you're attracted to a person. The primary reason that it has been found, the nose and the idea that snort, more like snot, shall I say, interacts with the piercing. And I think that when we think about our nose, we think of boogers. And that's like the first thing we think about. And with a piercing being up your nose, what is up there? Boogers. You go wipe your nose, and now it's all over your ring. But most people who have had, in the majority, piercings for a very long time basically know how to clean it and don't have that issue. So come on, guys. Now, and because of this, that's really the disgusting factor in it for men when it comes to being attracted to a potential partner. So that is it. It's more towards like the women as opposed to a men attraction. Just trying, we all have a tendency to look at things and then we wonder how we blow our nose or how they work with that and all of that. Something, when it's first done, it probably hurt really bad. And touching it was probably uncomfortable. It was swollen. It was healing. It was probably disgusting. But that's why they also tell you not to touch. And this is with any wound. Don't touch it and aggravate it. Let it heal. Make sure it's clean. Make sure you clean it every day. Even with regular earrings. What do they tell you to do? You got to clean them every day. Make sure they can move and it's free moving. The earrings cleaned, alcohol rubs and all that stuff. There you go. It's the same thing with any other piercing. Even if it's a nose piercing. But you got to look at it from that point of view. Now, moving along to the tattoo side of this. Now, there are some tattoos that have been considered the sexiest tattoos. And some people who do get tattoos, actually the majority of people who do get tattoos, one, it's either something they've been looking at for a very long time. They're not even thinking sexually. They're just thinking in general, I want to get one of those. But they've either held back on it because they're anticipating the alleged pain. Everybody has different with pain. So you really don't know what's going to happen until you go there. But hey, but another sense is people will get, or an individual, shall I say, will get a tattoo that symbolizes something and has meaning to that individual. And some people feel really attracted by this because now they have that added self-confidence. And, that's where it goes with. There are a lot of things that are out there that, you can hide your tattoos. Nowadays, tattoos aren't being hidden. A little bit more acceptable because of that. And really asking yourself, has, seeing someone with a tattoo changed your perception of how attractive they are? Heaven only knows. But we're going to, talk a little bit about that. Almost a third of Americans have at least one tattoo. So remember that as well. Tattoos are becoming extremely more popular. On that note, gonna keep you hanging. We are going to take the final break in the show. And when we come back, we will continue with the sexiest tattoos and a couple of least sexiest tattoos in there. Because we've already talked about the piercings. Let's change, the direction. Even though the body modifications are all grouped together. So, please stay comfortable, relax, continue at what you're doing. Hands in your pants or not. Hands in someone else's pants or not. Completely up to you. Because I will still meet you back here for more Sex Talk with Andra.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, with a topic about sex. This is the point of view of an older woman. Welcome back to the final segment in the show for today, where our topic is like the attractiveness of body modifications, particularly piercings and tattoos. And we talked about some piercings, and now we are on to tattoos, and that's how we're going to finish out the show. But also gave you your snow angel sex position, so try that out with your partner today and all that good stuff. So going on, there is the most attractive location for a tattoo scale out there. Okay, so look it up. And this is on both men and women. In the average range between 1.3 to 3.8. The scale was 1 to 5, 5 being the most attractive, 1 being the least attractive. And on both, although higher on women than men, was the face and the inner lip was the least attractive tattoo place to have a tattoo. Which, okay, I can see face to a certain extent. Some people out there with that, usually stars. So regardless of wherever theirs is, someone's, their fans are going to be attracted to them. So, but an everyday person, I'm assured I can, see where that would come in. But again, all in a preference. Inner lip, really weird because you don't exactly see in the inner lip unless, of course, they pull it down. So, a little confused with that one, but that is the least attracted on men and women alike. Now, neck is one of the least attractive places to have a tattoo on either, because between men and women, they kind of were in the 2.0 range, just slightly higher, like 2.2, but it was still somewhat attractive. It's not as least as the face or the inner lip. The more acceptable places on both males and females were the areas of the upper back, shoulders, the chest, upper arm was really big on the men, rib cage, and lower back, believe it or not, on both men and women was found to be attractive. And then you hit the abdominal area, abdomen. And that was starting to go down, but was still one of the highest as in attractive spots to have it. Lower, the women, their hips, and the men's, both were pretty attractive. Found to be very attractive, as well as the lower arm. When it came to the buttocks, it started to dip and go into the high 2-point whatevers. Kind of tinkering on that. Well, I think it really depended on who the person was. But that's a really soft area, so I'm really kudos to those who have it, believe me or not. The hand, still slightly higher, mid in the 2 points, whatevers. And with that actually becoming more of a thing that people do now, which is a little weird. But the upper leg was up on the higher attractive scale, as was the lower leg, mainly on men, not so much on women. It was a little lower. The ankle on both were pretty close, and the foot as well was pretty close in the attractiveness of it. You know, you got some ties in there, which were really let you know how they are being viewed now and how high they are very, being one of the turn-ons sexually. And it also really depended on the size. A lot of the sexuality with tattoos are the unknowns, and the attractiveness is when and how you get to see it and wanting to see it, and that little bit of that curiosity is really big. I won't even say little, it is big. And I think that is the big thing when it comes to some tattoos, and women will conceal more and can conceal more than men. Although men can conceal this very well. They're a little bit more out leaving it. But nowadays, both men and women are very big trailblazers with tattoos. And they are out there. And some people get they get one tattoo, love it, and it's a total turn on for them. And if they're with a partner, going with them and watching them get the tattoo is a total turn on for that. And when you go home, the sex is probably crazy mad and having fun, The way in which we view them, they are very special to that person, but they also need to be intimate for those individuals or prospective partners, and allowing them, you have one tattoo that they have not seen, and it's always somewhat of the, you show me mine, I'll show you, you show me yours, I'll show you mine kind of game playing, which is really a form of sexual hide and seek, and it's alluring, and it's really, I don't know who could sit through a tattoo that would be on their private, but I'm sure that they do it. But there are tattoos that not everybody can see, but through that scale, the most attractive places for tattoos, men and women were actually in agreement on most of the places that were more attractive and ones that were least attractive. And that was really what you need to look at. I mean, there were the most attractive tattoo styles that are here now. One of the highest on the scale is an illustrative tattoo. Japanese, abstract, pretty close to each other. And then you go into the watercolor and the Celtic, which was, they're riding right behind each other. Believe it or not, black tattoo art was on the lower side, falling into the non-attractive, believe it or not, which is really weird. And there were like some top styles of people who don't like tattoos. One is, which is out there right now, seems to be the biggest thing that people are doing or are using it as their logo, which is the diamond. And it's a minimalist tattoo. And that's one of the ones that is really least attractive, believe it or not. The koi fish, which is Japanese, which is generally if done correctly, a very beautiful tattoo, was one of the top ones where it wasn't liked, it's really weird. In Celtic, kind of sort of were at the same level. Believe it or not, the Japanese was actually more on the least liked tattoo as opposed to the most liked. So you really got to think about it. Is it thought, how it's done, how it's looked at? There were other ones there. Are people turned off or on by tattoos? There are some real ones out there, if they are done correctly, could be such an alluring factor and a turn on, especially if it starts in one place and you only get a little bit of a sneak peek of that, and all of a sudden your mind is now racing and you want to see the rest of it. It's such a sexual turn on, and you will work to go at it to get to see it. That might not be your best approach. It depends. If the person doesn't care and it's basically that one night stand, hey, there you go. More power to you. Both of you actually want it. Go for it. That's what it's all about. Sexually, you gotta ask, Then you ask yourself, well, what makes a tattoo attractive? Like, what makes it sexual? What makes it mean that you want to see it, touch it, be it, while it's on that place of the body? It's the artistry. What have I been talking about? The artistry. If you can get a Japanese tattoo, if the artwork is spot on, absolutely amazing, it's going to be one of the most attractive features in that tattoo or of that person that you're looking at, because it's going to be, not only are you attracted to them for what you see, but then you see the tattoo and it's even more sexy to you. And that's where you can look at that. Obviously, the size and the quantity is well on the lower end of that. Again, that is more of a preference for the person who is finding you attractive. These are just overall. And, these are individuals that actually were, representing the population. I don't think the whole entire population agrees with it, but a lot of the sexuality and the attractiveness of tattoos and piercing, especially tattoos, actually were on the same level, both in men and women. So they both agreed on a lot of things. But, it was 40% of men and women who agreed a tattoo was not a big detriment of attractiveness overall. Interesting enough. However, men were less likely to find a tattooed person attractive, obviously, versus a woman. Again, I think that has to do with the timing of how things are nowadays while we're going through a shift. But for the most part, nowadays tattoos are much, much more sexually attractive to both men and women. They find them sexually adventurous. So it's an adventure. You want to have something there. Does it influence some of these feelings? And more in men than women. And the men generally will tell you that the location of the tattoo played a large role in how they perceived someone's sexual attitude. Like I said, they're going into it as a sexually based thing. As a woman, they're going into it as it's meaning to them, and whatever you say doesn't make a difference. Tattoos. But I think women are more attracted to a man with tattoos, and it's so much of a total sexual turn on to them. More men are growing into that. Obviously, the ones that you don't want, and I said this earlier, is the name of your ex on your body. Kids are okay. They're your children. It's called respect for your children and showing off that you have them. But there are some out there, if you're going to get words put onto you in permanent ink, please make sure the tattoo artist knows how to spell. So check your tattoo before you get it done, and when they're drawing it on you, make sure all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, all that stuff, and it is spelt correctly. That is quite an embarrassment, not only on you, but on somebody, the person who actually did it. They're going to lose a lot of business. Believe it or not, prison tattoos, are turn-offs. Some people, I actually, from what you've seen, thought that was more of a turn-on for individuals, although it's kind of sort of saying all about who you are. I'm telling you, it differs. Really, really differs. Don't get that tattoo when you're drunk, because it is not going to come back very good on the sex portion of that and the attractiveness. Generally, a lot of people are getting them done over or getting a cover-up. So, with that in mind, I am at the end of the show for today and right now. So I do, always want you to practice safe sex. Even if you are attracted to that tattoo and you want to just bang the person wearing it, just so you can see the rest of it. Same with the piercing. See how it feels up against you, not so much for them. Do practice safe sex, if not for yourself, for your partner, and vice versa. Also, if you are going to try something new, or you're going to go get your first tattoo, always educate yourself and your partner, vice versa. Please communicate with your partner. Very, very important on all aspects. As well as consent. Very, very important. You want to have happy sex, not regrettable sex. On that note, I thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, which is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I ask that you look over there and see that subscribe button and click it. Put 5 stars, please, and give a good review. It not only helps me, but it does help the GSMC Podcast Network, knowing that they are bringing you what you want to hear. With that being said, I also will ask that you look for us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, because we're there too. And hit the little thumbs up like button. Show us some love there. Also, that little heart is a beating for you to click it. And please leave a comment, a good comment, and write something or text something that you want to hear on the show. That's what we are here for. Bringing you what you want to hear for our audience. With that all being said and done, I thank you again for tuning in. And I want you to go out and have some awesome sex. We are in daylight savings time now, so you might want to get a little extra because we're a little bit of an hour behind. And until next time, bye-bye for now. From Andra, we're talking about sex. This from the point of view of an older woman. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast.